Well, better late than never. Hey, what's up everyone, and welcome to my review for Star Trek Beyond, which of course is the third movie in the now rebooted Star Trek series that started with 2009's Star Trek and then 2013's Into Darkness, Star Trek Into Darkness, and now we have Star Trek Beyond. And of course this one is not directed by J.J. Abrams, who did such an excellent job with those last two. Love both of them. This one is directed by a little boy named Justin Lin, who of course, just like J.J. Abrams, loves his family dynamic. And and of course Justin Lin directed Fast and Furious, Fast 5, and Fast and Furious 6. All movies based around Vin Diesel going, family. Yo, we need to stick together, family. My Vin Diesel's not good. It sounds more like Tracy Morgan, but I mean, I don't do impressions, all right? I was so worried about this movie. You have no idea. For the last few months, it felt like between like June and like January of this year, there was like no press about this movie. Hell, they even had a celebration like in like what, April or May for Star Trek, and they didn't talk about Star Trek Beyond at all. So I was really worried this entire year about this movie because I loved the last two so much, and I thought Justin Lin screwed it up, even though I love Fast 5. I think that's a really fun movie, and I really like the sixth one, even though I still cannot stand that fourth one. I'm sorry. That's Fast and Furious. Confusing titles sometimes. Yeah. I'm not a big fan of that one, but I really like the other two. So I wasn't really that worried about it being a terrible movie. I was just worried that maybe Justin Lin just wasn't in his right element. You know, it was just, he made too much of a Fast and Furious movie, but called it Star Trek. And that first trailer made it seem very much like that. Like that was the case. But, you know, the last few trailers have been pretty good, and the hype has been building up, and it's out. It's doing okay at the box office, nothing great, sadly, so hopefully we get that next one. But still, I am happy to report that this movie is pretty good, and I'm happy to at least say that. I mean, it's not as good as the last two, in my opinion, definitely not, and some people that love the last two might hate this one, and some people that hated the last two might love this one, so it might be very divisive, but to me, it's a pretty damn good movie. It's a fun little summer blockbuster in a summer that has been filled with a lot of disappointments and, you know, piss poor movies here and there. So this is really a breath of fresh air, and it's a lot of fun. It takes the best stuff from the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies, the action, spectacle, all the visuals, all that stuff, and they mix it in with some of the more original Star Trek stuff. Like, you have a lot of characters just sitting around talking and, you know, developing relationships. There's a few scenes of just exploration where they're just exploring this new planet that the Enterprise crashes on after an unknown enemy attacks them, which is pretty much the whole plot. It's an unknown enemy attacks the Enterprise, they crash land on an unknown planet, they have to get off the planet and stop the unknown enemy. And along the way, they find out who this enemy is. It's Krall, his name is, and he's played by Idris Elba. We'll get to that in a second. But there's even some exploration and even a little bit of diplomacy in the beginning of the movie. You get, it just feels and even looks more like a Star Trek movie than the last two, especially since this one's way more episodic, meaning that this one really can stand on its own. This one has almost nothing to do with the other two movies besides a couple little references. So this one feels way more like just another episode of Star Trek. Alright, so now I described the movie and what I thought of it as vaguely as I could, so now we can get into the specifics. So let's get into it, okay, because I have my positives and negatives here. You know what, let's start off with negatives, okay? And this is my biggest negative. The villain. The villain in the last two, you could say whatever you want about Nero, who was the one in the original Star Trek, J.J. Abrams. And even a lot of those older movies have some generic villains, older Star Trek original series movies. And I'm sure the Next Generation ones have pretty generic villains here and there. But like the original series, besides Khan and Christopher Lloyd played a villain once, and I found him to be fun. I forgot which one that was. But there was a couple villains that were pretty generic in the last ones. But in the last two Star Trek movies, I thought Nero was good, and I thought Khan was incredible. Not as good as the original Khan, mind you, but he is so good. Benedict Cumberbatch as Khan in that last movie, he felt like a completely different character, to be honest. Even though he was called Khan, he didn't feel like Khan at all. But he played him in such a brutal and cold way. I loved him. In this one, Krall is so... First of all, he looks like a generic alien dude that you would see in a Star Trek episode that would get shot immediately by Kirk, like with his phaser or whatever. You know, maybe stun, maybe kill. I don't know. But he looked generic. The makeup was fine. It didn't look bad, and the design wasn't terrible either. If he was just a generic thug, if he was just like a generic thug, he would look cool. But him as the villain, he just had no presence, and that sucks because they got Idris Elba, who has presence. He is such a good actor. It's so charming and so likable. I don't know why. They could have got anybody, especially since you don't see Idris Elba because he has all this makeup on for like 90% of the movie. So he was really, really underused. Or actually, he should just not been used. He should have been written out of the movie and had a more interesting villain. So that's one thing I would say. Like, the writing is good. Simon Pegg and Doug Jung, I think his name was, did a really good job with all the dialogue and characters and stuff, which I'll get to in a second. But not the villain. Even when they go to the backstory, it's lame, but whatever. There's some characters that were underused, like Uhura wasn't really used as much as she was in the last two, which is fine, because she was used way more in those than she was in any of those original movies that I saw, and I'm sure the TV show as well. Ones that really annoyed me, like Sulu is barely used in this, just like he was barely used in the last one, and he was kind of used in the first one. Chekhov, which, rest in peace, Anton Yelchin, but he's not used almost... He's used more in this than he was in Into Darkness, but Into Darkness he was in the movie for like 3 minutes, it felt like. So that's kind of... that's faint praise. It really is. He's barely in the movie. And when he is, he's just staring off of... He doesn't really say anything. But he's still a likable character. Even all these characters that don't get enough screen time are still very likable. So yeah, some characters are definitely underused, but even when they're underused, they're still likable. And that's mainly because, and I'm going to get into the positives right here, I'm going to transition smoothly to the positives, the cast. The cast is so good, and I cannot believe how perfectly cast every actor is. Like, even Chekhov, like Anton Yelchin, rest in peace, bro. I'm really sad about that. Mostly because I just saw stuff like Green Room and of course this, and I saw something else with him recently. That wasn't a recent movie, but I just saw something recently with him in it. I can't remember what it was, but like I just saw things with him in it, and it felt like his career was just kind of taking off because Green Room was such a success, and everybody likes him in the Star Trek movies, and I felt like his career was finally going, and it's sad to see him go. So rest in peace, bro. It really is sad. But like the rest of the cast, even like John Cho, who barely gets any time to shine in any of these movies, is still really likable. And for the half a dozen lines these characters that don't get much screen time have, they sell them perfectly, and you like them because of that. Chris Pine, of course, he's the main character, so he gets plenty of screen time. And this is actually the best he's probably been in these movies, and he was great in the last two. But this is probably the best in a way where he feels more like a leader, which makes sense because this is 3 years after Into Darkness. And even in Into Darkness, he was still a leader, but he was still a little... He was a little brash. He would still do things that was just like, okay, come on, you're not really thinking of the team here. You're just thinking of what you think is right or whatever, or what could be fun or something. He's pretty much like Star-Lord. Or actually, I guess Star-Lord's more like Kirk. But whatever. So he's not really thinking about the team in those last two, and this one he really is. He's thinking about the team. He's thinking about the ship. He wants to be the leader that his father was for the captain that his father was for like the 30 seconds he commanded that ship. And that theme from the other two movies, even though this is a more episodic movie and it doesn't really reference the other two movies that much, that theme is still there, where he's still sad about his dad and he still has a legacy, even though he saved the galaxy a couple times from evil people. He still feels like he needs to prove himself. And he's still sad that his daddy's gone. You know, his mom's still alive. You never really see her. I mean, they mention her once in this movie, but you never really see her, which is a little annoying. I mean, he's all sad about his dad. Where's his mom? Huh? Once you see your mom, she's probably sad. Go see her. You know what? Screw Kirk. He's an asshole. No, I'm just kidding. Everybody else is great too. Zachary Quinto's great in here. But really, the main character here is Kirk, and it felt like way more his movie than a Kirk and Spock movie this time, because they don't really get too much of screen time this time, which is fine because we already saw 2 movies and a shitty video game all about that. And probably the best like character moments in the movie between two characters were actually Spock and Bones, which perfectly cast both of them. They are two great successors to those characters, Zachary Quinto and Carl Urban respectively. They were both so good, and they have great scenes together. I never thought I would ever say that Spock and Bones have the best chemistry in any of the Star Trek movies, which I really do agree with. Here, they are so good together, and there's a lot of really funny moments. Again, the dialogue is great, very well written from Simon Pegg and Doug Jung, I think. I think I'm saying his name right. I'm not sure. But, yeah, the characters are great. The cast is great. Special effects are amazing. I really don't need to say anything about that. They look wonderful throughout the entire film, pretty much. I really have nothing to say bad about that or the action. The action is so good in this movie. Even when it gets to some corny levels where Sabotage starts playing. Of course, that was in the first trailer. And even when that started playing, I was like, uh-oh. But then when that scene started playing out, it was actually a lot of fun. And it still felt more Star Trek than one scene in particular that I really didn't like. All the action, all the special effects, for the most part, are great. Spectacular, top-notch, some of the best action this year. There's one action scene, one set piece I really couldn't stand. It was just one where Kirk and Chekhov have to go into the remains of the Enterprise and find something. And they fight a bunch of the henchmen from Crawl or whatever, Kale or Broccoli, what's his name? Crawl, whatever, Aegis Alba. And they fight them off, and then the Enterprise, the rest of the Enterprise, which is pretty much just this part. I'm sure if you're a huge Star Trek guy, you know what this is called. The bridge? No, isn't this the bridge right here somewhere? Whatever, it's not really it's not a very accurate depiction of the Starship Enterprise. But, whatever, screw it. I don't have the best model. But anyway, just the circular part here, or the oval shaped part here, is just left, and they have to go into it, and then it just starts exploding, so much so that it's like lifting upwards, and it explodes because they shoot the fuel. It makes sense. It's not like it just happens out of nowhere. And it starts lifting up like it's about to take off, but there's no rest of it, so it's not. So it's like flipping over as Kirk and Chekhov are jumping off of it, sliding off like the bottom. It's like lifting up like this, and they're sliding off. It was so bad. I'm sorry. That scene I did not like. First of all, it was shot at night. It was edited like crazy. Like, you couldn't tell what the hell was going on. And it was so out of... Like, the whole movie felt like it was trying to be more grounded. And then out of there, I don't know where that happens. And it took me out of the movie. It really did. And it's just not a very fun scene when you can't tell what the fuck is going on. Like, the build-up towards the action part is pretty good. But when everything starts exploding, it's all downhill from there for the rest of that scene, which is like a good 5 minutes. So it's only really a 5-minute scene, but it really took me out. So really, it shows you how much 5 minutes in a movie that's over 2 hours can really ruin a movie. And I'm not saying it ruined it, really. But there's movies where like a 5-minute scene could really ruin a movie. And this one took me out of it for a good like 10 minutes after that scene. I was just like... And then it got me back in. I was like, alright, it's still good. But that scene I really didn't like. But besides that, I really had no other negatives. I wanted to wait to say that negative until I got to the action, because it was also a positive. But, even the special effects didn't look good in that one scene. But anyway, there you go. That's really all I have to say about Star Trek. I want to keep this a little shorter. I know it's still over 10 minutes, but whatever. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. That's my review for Star Trek Beyond. It's still a movie well worth checking out. It's a lot of fun. Great characters. Great acting. Rest in peace, Leonard Nimoy and Anton Yelchin. It was a good tribute for both of them. And you will both be, of course, sadly missed in the next Star Trek movie. And really, Leonard Nimoy wasn't even in this. There was a picture of him, and there was a picture of the original the original crew of the Starship Enterprise. That even me, not watching the original series, it made me tear up a little bit. You know, I mean, big fans will probably be like, "Oh my God, my childhood," or just, "Oh my God, the thing I really like," or whatever. So. Overall, I'd give this a 32 out of 40. It's still a great film. Go check it out, definitely. And, yeah, until next time, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, and goodbye.